opportunity. I'm not certain it's something, Jill, you ever thought you'd be doing, but here we are. And I see she's supported there by Javed Lal. Javed, can you wave to everybody and let them know you're on the phone? And then, of course, I don't know, are the attorneys on yet, the DA's office? So we have Ralph Chamness and David Pena.
Ralph is on.
Yeah, David Johnson. They've just been fantastic. We've been putting together grant agreements that, Ralph, I'm not sure your team thought that's what they would be doing, but that's sort of what COVID's thrown us into.
Live and change every day.
Yeah, it changes every day. So I guess that's a good segue to all of you to stay patient with us as we go through this. And then last but not least on our team is Abby. And Abby is not only the mayor's executive assistant and keeps all of the bells and trains and everything running for the mayor and the mayor on task, but she has stepped up in this and has agreed to be our grant manager. And so it's a great opportunity for Abby, but also a great opportunity for us to work with you, charter schools, one-on-one in a way that we've never been able to work with you before. And so we're really excited about that. So welcome. Thank you for giving us a few minutes today to kind of talk through how the reimbursement grant will work. I have a little bit of experience managing reimbursement grants. So when Ralph Chamness, one of the things I love about Ralph is throughout COVID, instead of being the attorney that tells me the reasons why we can't do something, he gives me the path forward as to how we can. And this approach is his genius. That really was genius. And so we're really thankful that we're able to roll out a program that a few of us are a little bit familiar with, but do it in a way that meets your needs. So Abby, with that welcome, I'll turn it back over to you. And if I missed anyone on the county team, I apologize. I think I got you all. You're on mute, Abby.
You'd think after how many months of this, I would be better at it, but I'm not. So there it is. So that's introductions. That's our team. If you guys have any questions, obviously, feel free to let us know. I'm going to turn it over now to Jill Miller, who is the Associate Deputy Mayor of Finance and Administration, and Javed, who is the Director of the Office of Data and Innovation, and they're going to kind of explain how the reporting portal is going to work. And I included the link to the portal in the agenda that I sent out today. So Jill?
Great, thank you, Abby. Before we jump into the reporting, just a reminder for everyone on behalf of Abby that if you haven't gotten your agreements in, please do. She sent a supplier vendor management form with that agreement, and we need you to fill out that as well so that we can get you in our system. So that's on behalf of Abby. And just a note that we do need to get those forms returned before you can submit any reimbursements. I know that seems sort of obvious, but just wanted to be clear about that. So per the agreement and the amounts that each of you have received, you're eligible to be reimbursed for expenses that you've incurred from June 1st through October 31st, 2020. All of those reimbursements will need to be submitted no later than November 15th, 2020. You can begin submitting as soon as you provide the signed agreement, and then we'll countersign it and send it back to you. So we can move forward very quickly on that. But know that November 15th is the deadline for any reimbursements. As Abby said, we've created a simple process for reimbursements. I think you'll find it quite easy. Javed Lal, who's I'm going to hand over to in a minute, is our expert on all things data and innovation and has created a very simple smart sheet that will easily walk you through the process. Just wanted to mention too that if you are not the right person who will be submitting the reimbursements, if you have someone on your fiscal team that's going to do that, feel free to pass the link on to them and the information on to them. We also, if there's enough interest, are happy to host a WebEx with that particular group of fiscal managers to walk them through the process and answer any questions as well. So Javed, I will hand it over to you now.
Thank you, Jill. I will share my screen. Good morning, everybody. I will share my screen and we'll quickly go over the form. Like Jill said, we try to make it as simple and as convenient as can be. There are some functionalities that I'll just talk about in terms of attaching documentation to that form and submit that. That should be very easy. So you can see my screen. This on the left side of the
We
screen.
can't see it, Javed.
Oh, you cannot? I'm sorry.
No.
I can see it.
Now we
Okay,
can
it's
see it.
here now. Great. So you should all have access to this form. We'll send it by email, and if there's some trouble finding, we'll make it available on some public website. That's county COVID economy page. That could be another option, but currently I believe we'll just share that by email. On the left side of the screen, we've had some instructions. These are very generic Treasury language that we've added there. There are some links there that you can click and find out more about the CARES funding. It does provide some guidance, mostly for the municipalities, cities, and counties, not particularly for the schools, but I think it's still a good resource to have. And also, if you come across any question that you need to talk to the team, to county fiscal team, there's a link here. You can, it'll open up another page. You can send us a question and we'll respond to that question as soon as possible. So the way to start, we simply start with your name, your email, valid email, and we can also send a confirmation of the receipt of your reimbursement request if you provide us your proper email, your phone number, and then we have listed all the charter schools in the list. So it's easy to find your school. You can type in, for example, if you're looking for City Academy, you can search it, or you can just scroll down and find your school and from the list. So let's just say we select Summit Academy, and there's some additional fields will open up. And that's where the day of the request, that's a reimbursement request date, there's a calendar drop down. You can select the date, for example, 26 today, and then the total amount that you're requesting for your reimbursement. So let's say you're requesting 10,000 here. In this field, we do want you to describe what are the services or items that were purchased for this reimbursement request. It could be PPEs, this could be some other disinfected supplies or other thing that you're purchasing. So just provide some detail here. And then by the way, all these fields are required. You just notice that if you just move on to next field, there'll be a red caution saying that this field is required. And then the second field, we do need to have some explanation, like how does this relate to COVID response? So again, all the supplies that you purchase and then how they relate to the COVID response. And this is where you would need to attach all your backup receipts. So the easiest way would be, you can just drag your file here. If I open up a file quickly just to show you. Browse your file. And in this case, I'll just say, for example, browse, and you can attach your file. So you can attach as many files as you need. I wasn't sure like why I didn't do the drag piece, but we'll figure that out. I did actually, I'm sorry, right here. So you can drag your file, you can browse your file, all the backup receipts would need to be here. And then as you can also copy yourself if you want copy of this submission. We will send a confirmation as well as you can just select, send me a receipt of my response and send your email and submit that. If you miss any field, it's going to highlight that these fields are required, so you won't be able to submit. So generally, it's very easy. We're not asking for more detail on the CARES funding side. There's like 16, 17 different categories we'll figure out on our end. But I think this is going to be simply just items you purchased, your description or explanation of those purchases, and attach your backup and submit, and that's it. Any question that I can answer?
It's a pretty simple process. I did notice that someone had a question, how do we know their dollar amount allocated to our school? I believe that amount was in the initial email that you received from the mayor. Additionally, on the agreement, when you sign the agreement and send it back to us, we'll countersign and add that amount back in. I'm sure Abby would be happy to provide that amount for you as well if you have a question about it.
And just to show how the end of the process, I'm just going to enter some test information here. So you'll see, like, once you submit it, it's going to have a message at the end, like, we have captured your information. So it'll say success, we've captured your response. So that's just a confirmation that it's been submitted, but then we'll also send an email back to you. The email will come from Office of Data Innovation. So that just as a reminder that it doesn't go to your spam filter.
Javed, there's a question here. Is the reimbursement request date the date of your request or the date the purchase was made?
I believe this is going to be the date of the request.
That's right.
Because for county, once we process the payment, that's the time that is booked as incurred as expense, but that is going to be just the date of your request.
Any questions for Javed? Now we're going to go into what I call the meat and potatoes part of the meeting, which is hearing from Ralph and his team about eligibility. So I saw that someone else has a question on there that I think we'll hold on until we hear from Ralph and his team.
I'll just start off real quick, Dave. Let me just so everyone knows that while Carrie says this was brilliant, this is just recycle. All lawyers recycle ideas all the time. This is a recycled idea which, fit. So it's always nice when you find a little square peg in a square hole that comes out. But part of this is I'll introduce the two lawyers who really know what they're doing. Dave Johnson and Dave Pena have been working on CARES, I don't know, the day it was passed. I can tell you, I guarantee you there's not two lawyers who spent more time on CARES since it came through in the state of Utah. And if there are, they're very well hidden. So the Daves, it's sad when two people have merged, but the Daves have really become the source of all CARES information. So just know that we've relied upon them heavily. Again, please recognize this is my lawyer disclaimer. This is why you're told don't put shampoo in your eyes. We are lawyers for the county. We are not your own individual lawyers. But this is a kind of a rare situation where we want to make sure it's right and that CARES funding is expended appropriately, because if the Treasury or someone comes back and tells the county to pay it back, we're going to be coming to you and telling you to pay it back. And we certainly would prefer to never be in that situation. So just know our office, we have said we will help if there are specific questions. If your lawyers want to talk to us, we're more than happy to talk to lawyers. And I think, as Javed said, if you send your comments into even on the portal, we will certainly help with that. So with that disclaimer, I'll turn it over to the people who know what they're talking about, Dave Johnson and Dave Pena.
Well, I'll echo everything Ralph said there, except for we're happy to talk to your lawyers. No, talking to lawyers is awful. Joke aside, if you have questions, your lawyers have questions, seriously, please have them give us a call, run legal questions by them. The 10,000 foot level of the CARES Act, as it was passed in order to address the public health emergency. And I'm just going to pull my notes over here so it doesn't look like I'm looking away from the screen the whole time. For the county's purposes, just so you have some background, it addresses expenditures that are necessary to address the emergency that were not budgeted for in the county's original budget adopted as of the day that the CARES Act was passed, and that was March 27th. Again, this is for the county's budget, but it's just background information. And it's for expenses that are incurred in a set period. Now, your set period is smaller than that, which is allowed under the CARES Act, and that's so that we can administer the funds that are unexpended. All you need to know is that your period is June 1st, October 1st. But that's all really top-level stuff. The real question for you is, how can you spend it? What can you spend it on? And one of the primary purposes of the CARES Act was to help governmental entities slow the spread, mitigate the spread of COVID-19. I see there's a question in the comments here. The date, was that October 1st or October 31st? I thought that was the 1st, but let me pull up your contract. If somebody has a quicker answer.
October 31st, Dave.
October. It was my misstatement. October 31st. Thank you for clarifying that, by the way.
No problem.
So the purchase of PPE, that seems to be a buzzword we hear a lot these days. Anything to help slow the spread, masks, glasses if they're necessary, disinfection costs. So we're looking at disinfecting surfaces, hand sanitizers, the cost of cleaning, so long as that cleaning is with the intent of slowing the spread, right? So it probably won't cover the cost for toilet bowl cleaner, something that is to slow the spread, something that is to disinfect surfaces. There's also costs relating to the maintaining of social distancing or limiting the contact between people. Here we can get into some potential technology costs, costs to allow for programming online, field trips online, costs that will limit the common contact points between people. Those are all costs that are probably going to be fine. Now, when the county looks at these costs, we kind of do a quick and dirty breakdown into 3 categories, green, yellow, and red. And I think the designation is kind of self-explanatory. The green level are things like PPE, hand sanitizer, so long as they're needed to address the spread of COVID-19. We can get into some of the yellow and maybe some of the red if we're looking at perhaps technology that, I don't know how to say this lightly, that could be viewed by the Treasury as a toy, right? Something that maybe an organization has needed for a long time, and they can make some sort of an argument that it qualifies to slow the spread or qualifies for social distancing, but really looks like it's something that they've wanted for a long time and will address some other need. Those, we start to get into the yellow costs and the red costs. Just remember, as Ralph said, the Treasury gets to look at every single expenditure, and they have said that they will. And if the Treasury comes back in their sole discretion and determines that any of these expenditures violate the CARES Act, the county has to pay them back, and at that point we could come knocking on your door for those expenditures as well. Dave, do you have anything else to add? That was very quick. We've attached some documents. Those documents are the guidance from the Treasury on how to interpret the CARES Act, because the act itself is as far as these funds are concerned, is very short, very low on detail. And we've also attached some frequently asked questions that you and your attorneys can refer to. Dave, do you have anything else?
I would just add, Dave, also, before we get to the green, yellow, and red categories, another thing that the county does frequently, and lawyers are familiar with this simple test, is the but-for test. The county will simply review something, and kind of the simple question is, but for COVID-19, would that expenditure be made? Generally speaking, if you can answer that affirmatively, that's probably going to pass. It may still fall into a green, yellow, or red area, but it should pass. The other thing is the expenditures, proposed expenditures we've seen that the Treasury that we have seen, and also the Treasury have said are not permissible, that I think you may come up against at the schools. One is damages, legal settlements, those types of things. If you're trying to recoup money for that would likely be denied. The other thing to be careful of is there's a very clear prohibition against duplicating funds. So I know there's multiple funding sources probably for schools for various items you need. You can't duplicate those. You can use multiple sources of funding to cover an expenditure, to cover the entire expenditure. What you have to be very cautious about is not basically profiting, not catching multiple sources of funding and then exceeding your actual expenditure. That would not be permitted and be a violation of our agreement. I think that's it. I think Dave covered everything else that I had.
Well, and along those lines, you bring up some good points. One other thing that we've seen come up and that's specifically prohibited would be a workforce bonus. Paying for any
Correct.
kind of bonus because somebody's working during the pandemic is specifically prohibited. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers it.
So we have a few questions that have been entered in the chat. Do you want to do those right now?
Sure, let me take a moment to look at that.
I can just go ahead and read them if you'd like, or you can
Sure.
look at them.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so the first one is the reimbursement request date the date of your request or the date of the purchase made?
And this is Jill. It's the date of the request.
Okay. It looks like payroll expenses for staff needed to be provided. Online only learning is an eligible expense. There is not a receipt, so what form of documentation would be required for that expense?
So I guess I'll chime in on that one real quick. Just payroll expenses, again, it has to be directly related to the COVID response. And so it depends on how you are I suppose it depends on how each entity is documenting that would depend upon the documentation we would have.
So
it's hard to make that an answer, a one size fits all, because everyone may have a separate way of keeping track of what time is being devoted to COVID.
okay. Will we be able to submit several requests?
Yes. You can submit requests up until November 15th, as long as they're within the eligibility timeframe. And you can definitely submit more than one.
Is the link to the site in the attachments that were sent out this morning?
Yes, it was. I included it in the agenda. And if you need it again, just email me.
Okay. And then is the expiration date October 1 or October 31?
31,
30.
that was my mistake, yep.
For technology purchases or other yellow-green expenditures, what type of documentation is considered adequately needed? For example, if we needed to distribute over 100 computers that we usually have on site to students and then have needed to acquire more computers for the in-person learning, it definitely meets the but-for test, but how do you want that documented?
I would hope we would have an explanation, kind of just what was there, and explain why. I mean, it's an explanation of why. We just need to have an explanation of why why the but-for test is satisfied.
Exactly.
And
that whoever's looking at it isn't going to know your operations. Explain it so that somebody that's coming in from the outside can look at it quickly and see what the connection is with that but-for test.
Yeah.
And then is it possible to submit requests for the Treasury in advance?
Well, remember, the Treasury has already given the county the money. So this is county money. I would say if you have questions about is an expenditure CARES eligible, you can utilize the form that Javid pointed out where the questioner comments, and someone will get back to you. That would be the best I could say on that. And again, our response probably would be the county would consider this or would have to take a harder look. We'll try to give more guidance if we are asked, but the Treasury, hopefully the Treasury will not be looking at these unless they're coming back and doing an audit of the county, which I think will be well beyond the time that we have to expend the money.
Okay, and that is all the questions that are currently in the chat.
Can I raise one quick question that Jill and Carrie, just so everyone understands as well, that the way that the CARES funding, the county has to spend all of its CARES money by December 30th. So the reason that we are requiring each entity to spend their money, and if it's not spent is by a certain time, is if we have unexpended money, we have to give it back. And obviously the county would prefer to have that CARES money used for its intended purposes in the community. And if you can't use it, we would hope we could find another use for it, which would allow it to do so. Just know that I've gotten questions from municipalities of, gee, why does the county have until December 30th and we don't? And I've always responded, well, I don't want you to come back with us with $500,000 on December 30th and us go, gee, we had 6 other people waiting for that money that we couldn't give it to them. So just a point on the timing on why it may seem a little shorter. And if you're here December 30th, that's the reason why we put that in.
Thank
Hey,
you,
Ralph,
Ralph.
Ralph, to that same point, the reason that we are allowing you to do a look back to June 1st is we know that over the summer you've made purchases that are COVID related. And so this is intended to allow you to receive reimbursement from the reimbursement grant for those purchases, which then frees up money in your current budget to do other things. And so if I were you, if I were running your finances, I would go back and look at anything beginning June 1st that I expended that would be eligible. I'm going to submit that for reimbursement and get the money back. And that's how this is intended to work. We really want you to be able to get reimbursement for the full amount we've allotted to you.
Thank you so much for that. We have a couple more questions that have come in. If we have a typical expense, but due to COVID, we had to adjust and pay significantly more than budgeted, do we only request the difference or can we request the entire amount?
I think that ties in another one. It's only the amount that was not budgeted before. I mean, you can't, this is, again, and that goes back to it'd been so much nicer if they said this could be revenue replacement and we could have just used it how we wanted, but it specifically says it can't have been budgeted for. So it's the delta between, if you budgeted $10 for Clorox wipes and you spent 50, you're entitled to the 40, not the 50.
Okay. The next question is, a while back, schools received some CARES Act funding from the state to help pay for COVID eligible expenses. So long as these schools don't duplicate such expense from the funding, are they still eligible for the county funding?
Yes. And that was kind of Dave's point. I mean, if you spent $10 and you've gotten $5 from some other source, you can fully fund the $10, so you get additional $5. But you can't get 3 $5 grants and come out with 15 for a $10 expense. So yes, it does not make you ineligible, but again, that might be a helpful piece if you've received. I'm going to use my Clorox wipe example. You budgeted $10, you spent 50. The state gave you $20. You're now $20 short. It might be nice in your request of saying, here's the receipt. It shows 50. We had budgeted 10, we've received 20, and we're asking for the final 20. That would be helpful as well.
And then somebody asked, laptops for teachers, webcams for teachers.
Again, so long as they pass the but-for test, if it's something that you need in order to help them work remotely, then it should be fine.
Right, so this next question just goes back to the eligibility. Receiving state funds does not make them uneligible to receive county funds, correct?
Correct, it's the duplication that duplication or even profiting off of the federal funding, that's the problem.
So the same receipt for the same $10 can't be submitted multiple times, but it could be submitted $8 to one organization and $2 to you guys.
Exactly. So yes, actually the receipt could be submitted multiple times so long as the full amount is
just total
not duplicated.
Amount. Yeah.
Right.
Doesn't exceed the amount of the receipt.
Right.
So if we hired additional instructors for online education due to COVID-19, we will only be able to use this funding for their payroll up to October 31st. Is that correct?
Is this a stump the lawyer question? I don't know.
Ralph, I would say yes. I would say yes because we put those parameters of time around it.
Yeah. Okay. If a charter school has a volunteer board member who works at the county, does that make the charter school ineligible for the funding per 5.1 on the agreement?
I don't think so. I've handled the conflict question in the past. I think what we've asked for is to disclose the nature of the conflict, but I think that's more so the county can deal with it on its end. If there was a decision maker, if they were related to the person who was deciding they were going to get funds, we'd want to address it at the county, but I don't think that's a disqualifier.
Agreed.
And you might want to have that volunteer board member reach out to our office if they have questions on their disclosure obligations at the county.
Okay, I'm going to say it. That's all the questions I'm seeing now, and then people will start typing like crazy and add a few more. But that is what I'm seeing. See, here it comes. How about touchless water refilling stations? So, you know, the drinking fountains where you can just stick the water bottle in and it refills it without touching anything. Would that qualify?
To me, that seems reasonable because you're reducing a contact point, and contact points spread COVID.
And
Yeah,
that does kind of bring up another offshoot of this, that there are items like that which I hope we don't buy touchless water stations that are going to die on December 30th. Hopefully that will be there for years to come. So just know that is, if you're making decisions, that is one of those things that will last, and there is no obligation to send that back. It doesn't turn into a pumpkin on January 1 where it's no longer eligible expense. So there are things like that may not have been budgeted for, which might be good long-term investments. So
we call those at the county the silver linings of COVID.
So again, if you've got a question, can you type it in pretty quick here? Otherwise, we're going to wrap up the Q&A session.
And remember, you can always send questions to the link on the smart sheet. We'll get back to you.
Outdoor picnic tables. I think that would be if you're moving your kids out of your lunchroom into an outdoor space to reduce the spread. I don't know. I'll let you guys weigh in on that.
Yeah, you need to give more explanation, as you indicated, as what the COVID relationship is. Just purchasing outdoor picnic tables without an explanation would probably fall into a risky category.
But if you said our existing lunchroom seats 70 people, but if you do that, they are all within 2 inches apart. If we try to keep the social distancing part, we can only have 25 in there, and purchasing sufficient tables to seat our students. I think you can give an explanation to make that a justifiable and eligible expense, but we would need that explanation.
And Jill, I want outdoor picnic tables at the county. I think it's a brilliant idea.
So what I kind of get from that is, if you have an expense you're not sure of, please call and get further clarification from the county, but make sure you're also putting in the reason that you've got an expense, an explanation with everything, to make the lives of the county employees easier, so they can not have to read your mind as to how that expense is COVID related. But make sure your explanation is really prominent or explicit in its, and now I'm just rambling.
No, again,
make sure you have a good definite explanation.
Remember that we're writing these explanations for somebody in Washington who doesn't know us, doesn't know our state, is reviewing them, so that they don't stop with questions and focus on anything while they're reviewing it. So keep that in mind.
So, and then the last comment I'm seeing is just a thank you from the schools. They so much appreciate the effort of the county to really come to their aid during these difficult times, and feel like you're a partnership as they move forward to work on educating students. And now we'll get a whole bunch of dittos on that. So
it's our pleasure. We're glad that we were in a position that we could make funds available both for the school districts and the charter schools. It's been an absolute pleasure to work on this project. I think I speak for the entire county team when I say that.
Well, I know as I speak for the charter teams, we just appreciate that partnership.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, it looks like there are no more questions. Does somebody from the county team want to just wrap up, or are we good to go?
Abby, do you have any last minute thoughts?
I do not. I am actually, there's a couple more questions that are coming into me, so I'm going to defer to you or Carrie just to wrap up. But let me just say thank you so much to everyone for being here. And of course, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me or anyone else on the team. But if you guys want to wrap it up, I'll try and answer these questions before the Zoom ends.
Sure. I'll just say that Abby is really going to be your key contact at the county, which is great. So any of with smart sheets and things, those questions will come into her and others as well, but she'll coordinate that. If you have any questions, you can check with her. Please, again, get the agreements with the supplier forms back to Abby. She'll have then those finally executed and send those final copies back to you, and we're ready to go. So thank you, everyone. We're looking forward to working with you on this project.
So that will kind of wrap up the training. I think Abby's going to hang out just a little bit longer to answer any questions you have. Otherwise, charter schools, good luck this week. I know many of you, this is your first week back, and we wish you well and safety.